I've recently been commissioned by the Canadian War Museum to restore this antique Japanese sword. Now, this sword is quite the piece in a few different ways. Number one, it's about 450 years old. It's in katana mounts, but it actually started out as a Japanese pole arm. It was probably quite a bit longer and shaped differently, but at some point in history, perhaps just before the Second World War, it was cut down and it was put into these katana mounts so it could be worn by an officer. Secondly, and which is important to us as Canadians and the War Museum, this sword was donated by the family of Joan Blanford Fletcher, who was a Canadian and a Fanny nurse during the Second World War. She was posted in Dutch Sumatra, where she was to look after about 2,000 Dutch prisoners of war held there by the Japanese. She, not single-handedly, but pretty much almost single-handedly, led the 71 Japanese soldiers and the officer, along with the 2,000 Dutch nationalists, to safety after the war. The Sumatran nationalists were actually trying to pretty much kill the Japanese and the Dutch at the time, and she was quite the woman. She basically saved just about everybody in that group. And at the end of the whole process, the commander of the prisoner of war camp, the Japanese officer, presented this sword to Joan Blanford Fletcher, basically thanking her for saving himself and the men after the war. So this was in her possession until she passed, and her family donated this to the War Museum. I was commissioned by the museum to restore it, bring it back to its original condition, because it had been, well, not looked after the war. It had rusted quite badly, and somebody had taken some sandpaper and some steel wool to it. I'll show some before pictures so you can actually see what kind of condition it was in. Now, I thought it was a very good piece to maybe show a little bit of the process of restoring a Japanese sword, and you'll get to see that in a few minutes. It's done now, it's very beautiful, and hopefully it'll be on display in the Canadian War Museum very shortly.